You know what's interesting? Your ancestors ate foods that could actually stabilize blood sugar in a matter of weeks, reduce inflammation in your arteries, and support your heart for decades. And most of these foods are sitting in your grocery store right now, completely ignored. The Bible mentioned these 20 foods over and over again, not because they were trendy, but because they worked. And now, thousands of years later, modern research is finally catching up and showing us exactly why they worked. Here's what most people don't realize: if you're over 45 and you're struggling with things like low energy, stubborn cholesterol numbers that won't budge, blood sugar that keeps creeping up, or digestive issues that make you uncomfortable, you might be missing the exact foods that ancient cultures relied on every single day. These aren't exotic superfoods that cost a fortune. They're whole, simple foods that have been feeding people for thousands of years. And science is now showing us, with real studies and real numbers, exactly how they protect your heart, support your metabolism, calm inflammation, and give you energy that actually lasts. I'm Sophia. I started looking into all of this after I watched my parents try every trendy diet and expensive supplement out there, only to end up more confused than when they started. What I found surprised me. The simplest foods, the ones people have been eating since biblical times, had some of the strongest research behind them. Not hype, not marketing, actual peer reviewed studies showing what these foods do inside your body. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to walk you through 20 foods mentioned in the Bible that modern science now validates. For each one, I'll explain what it actually does in your body. Not just that it's healthy, but how it works. What mechanisms are happening inside you and what realistic benefits you can expect. No miracles, no magic. Miracles. Just practical information that you can actually use. First, barley. Let's start with barley. This is one of the oldest grains humans ever grew. It shows up all through the Old Testament, and even in the story where Jesus fed 5,000 people with just barley bread. Most of us walk right past barley in the grocery store. It seems too ordinary, too simple to matter. But here's what makes barley different. Barley contains an unusually high amount of a specific type of fiber called beta glucan. When you eat barley, this fiber dissolves in your digestive tract and forms a thick gel like substance. That gel does two really important things. First, it slows down how quickly glucose enters your bloodstream. Normally, when you eat refined carbs like white bread, they break down fast, flood your system with sugar, and your pancreas has to release a big surge of insulin to handle it. But when you eat barley, that gel physically slows the absorption. Your blood sugar rises gently. Your cells don't get overwhelmed. Second, beta glucan binds to cholesterol in your intestines. Your liver then has to pull cholesterol from your bloodstream to make more bile acids. The result is your LDL cholesterol. The kind that builds up in artery walls goes down. A big review published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that eating about 3 grams of barley beta glucan daily reduced LDL cholesterol by an average of 7%. That's real. And for someone whose cholesterol is borderline high, that could be the difference between needing medication or not. If you want to try it, aim for at least half a cup of cooked barley several times a week. If you're on medication for cholesterol or blood sugar, tell your doctor you're adding more soluble fiber. Second, whole wheat. There's another grain, probably sitting in your pantry right now, that most people are eating in the worst possible form: wheat. It's mentioned more than almost any other food in the Bible. But the wheat most of us are eating today has been stripped of the two parts that actually matter. Think about your last sandwich: white bread. By the time it reaches you, it's missing the bran where the fiber lives and the germ where the vitamins live. What's left is just the starchy middle. When you eat whole grain wheat, you're getting a completely different food. The bran contains fiber. The germ contains B vitamins and magnesium. Here's the chain reaction. When you eat refined flour, your blood sugar spikes. Your pancreas releases insulin. If you do this repeatedly, your cells start ignoring insulin. That's how type 2 diabetes begins. But whole grains blunt that entire cascade. A huge study followed more than 160,000 women for over a decade and found that those who ate the most whole grains had a 30% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Look at the ingredient list. The first ingredient should say whole wheat flour, not wheat flour or enriched flour. That's the difference. Third, flax seeds. Flax, in the Bible, it was grown for linen, but the seeds themselves have become one of the most studied foods in nutritional science. You've probably seen flax seeds in the health food aisle and forgot about them. They're tiny. It's hard to believe something that small could do anything. But flax seeds contain three components that work together. First, omega 3 fatty acids. Your body can't make them on its own. ALA reduces inflammation by blocking molecules that promote inflammation. Chronic low grade inflammation is one of the main drivers of heart disease and diabetes. Second, lignans. These are plant compounds that act as antioxidants. Flax seeds contain up to 800 times more lignans than most other foods. Third, soluble and insoluble fiber. The soluble fiber helps lower cholesterol. The insoluble fiber helps move things through your digestive system. If you've been struggling with constipation, flax can make a noticeable difference within a few days. A study published in Hypertension found that people who ate 30 grams of ground flax seeds daily for 6 months saw their systolic blood pressure drop by an average of 10 points. That's better than many blood pressure medications. You have to grind flax seeds. If you eat them whole, they'll pass through your digestive system intact. Store them in the fridge after grinding. Fourth, millet. The next grain most people have never even cooked, millet. It shows up in Ezekiel, part of a specific bread recipe. But on its own, millet is a small grain that's been a staple in Africa and Asia for thousands of years. If you're looking for a grain that won't spike your blood sugar, is naturally gluten-free, and actually helps you sleep better, millet is worth learning about. Millet has a low glycemic index, around 50 to 55, compared to white rice at 70 or 80. It's high in magnesium. Magnesium does two things that are directly relevant if you're over 45. First, it helps regulate blood sugar. When you're low in magnesium, you're more likely to develop insulin resistance. A study in diabetes care found that people with the highest magnesium intake had a 47% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Second, magnesium affects your nervous system. It helps activate the part that promotes rest and digestion. Low magnesium is associated with poor sleep quality and anxiety. If you've been waking up at 3 in the morning and can't fall back asleep, magnesium deficiency might be part of the picture. Cook millet like rice. 1 part millet to 2 parts water. Bring it to a boil, reduce the heat, cover, and simmer for about 20 minutes. Try it as a side dish or as a breakfast grain with a little honey and cinnamon. Fifth, figs. They're one of the most frequently mentioned fruits in the Bible, but in modern diets, they've almost disappeared. If you've only ever had fig Newtons, you don't really know what figs are. Fresh figs are soft, sweet, and slightly chewy. But if you're a woman over 50, or if you're dealing with constipation, figs deserve a second look. Here's what makes figs different. They're one of the best plant sources of calcium. A half cup of dried figs contains about 120 milligrams of calcium, roughly the same as a half cup of milk. After menopause, when estrogen levels drop, women lose bone density fast. Figs are a legitimate alternative to dairy. Figs contain both soluble and insoluble fiber. The soluble fiber feeds beneficial bacteria in your gut. The insoluble fiber adds bulk and helps move stool. A study found that people who ate dried figs regularly had improved bowel function and less straining. But dried figs are calorie-dense and high in natural sugars. If you're managing diabetes, you need to be mindful of portions. Try adding 2 to 3 dried figs to your breakfast, or as a mid-afternoon snack. Sixth, grapes. The next fruit, one that shows up all over the Bible, does something even more targeted for your heart. Grapes. Vineyards are everywhere in the Old and New Testaments. And it turns out, grapes, especially the skins and seeds, contain compounds that directly protect your cardiovascular system. Grapes are loaded with plant compounds called polyphenols. These act as antioxidants, meaning they neutralize harmful molecules that damage your cells. But polyphenols do more than just clean up damage. They actually change the way your blood vessels function. One specific compound in grapes is called resveratrol, found primarily in the skin. Resveratrol improves the function of the inner lining of your blood vessels. When that lining is healthy, your blood vessels dilate properly, blood flows smoothly, and your blood pressure stays controlled. A study published in Circulation Research found that people who consumed polyphenol-rich foods, including grapes, had significantly improved blood vessel function within just a few weeks. But here's what most people miss: grape juice and raisins are not the same as whole grapes. When you juice grapes, you remove the fiber. The sugar hits your bloodstream fast, your insulin spikes. You lose the blood sugar stabilizing benefit. Eat a cup of whole grapes, preferably red or black grapes, a few times a week. Keep the skins on. That's where the resveratrol is. Seventh, pomegranates. Grapes protect your blood vessels from the inside. But the next fruit does something even more dramatic for inflammation: pomegranates. In the Bible, they were woven into the hem of the high priest's robe. Modern research is showing that they might be one of the most potent anti inflammatory foods we have access to. Pomegranates contain a class of antioxidants called bunicoladins, and they're incredibly powerful. Pomegranate juice has been shown to have 3 times the antioxidant activity of red wine or green tea. These compounds reduce oxidative stress and block inflammatory pathways. Why does that matter? Because chronic low-grade inflammation is the underlying driver of almost every major age-related disease: hardening of the arteries, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, arthritis. Pomegranates also improve your cholesterol profile. Research published in Atherosclerosis found that drinking pomegranate juice daily for 3 months reduced LDL oxidation. That's when LDL cholesterol becomes damaged and more likely to stick to artery walls. A clinical trial found that in people with existing heart disease, pomegranate juice reduced the thickness of plaque in their arteries. That's not just prevention, that's reversal. Pomegranate juice is very high in natural sugars, though. If you're drinking a full glass every day and you have insulin resistance, you might be making things worse. The whole fruit is better. Eat a half cup of pomegranate seeds a few times a week. Eighth, olive oil. The next food does something even simpler and more fundamental. It changes the type of fat in your blood. Olives and olive oil. Olive trees are all over the Bible. They symbolized peace, prosperity, and blessing. And today, olive oil is the cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet, one of the most researched eating patterns in the world for longevity and heart health. Olive oil is made up primarily of a fat called oleic acid. Unlike saturated fats, which tend to raise LDL cholesterol, oleic acid is liquid and has the opposite effect. It lowers LDL cholesterol while maintaining or even raising HDL cholesterol. But olive oil doesn't just change cholesterol numbers. It changes the behavior of your cells. Oleic acid gets built into cell walls, making them more fluid and functional. It reduces inflammation. It improves how your cells respond to insulin. The pre-dimed trial, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, followed more than 7,000 people at high heart risk. Those who followed a Mediterranean diet with extra virgin olive oil had a 30% reduction in major heart events compared to a low-fat diet. 30%. That's huge. Here's the shift we need to make. We've been told that fat is bad, but the type of fat matters more than the amount. Olive oil is a fat that protects you. Use extra virgin olive oil as your primary fat. Store it in a cool, dark place. Ninth, dates. The next food is smaller, sweeter, and packs nutrients into a form so concentrated that ancient cultures considered it a luxury. Dates. When the Bible refers to honey in the phrase land of milk and honey, many scholars believe it's actually talking about date honey. Dates were a primary sweetener, a travel food, and an energy source in the ancient world. Dates are high in natural sugars, but they also contain fiber, which slows the absorption of that sugar. That means they give you a quick energy boost without spiking your blood sugar as dramatically as refined sugar would. But here's what makes dates really valuable. They're packed with potassium, magnesium, and B vitamins. 3 or 4 dates contain about 300 milligrams of potassium, roughly the same as a small banana. Potassium is critical for regulating blood pressure. Think of dates like a multivitamin you can actually taste. You're not just getting sugar, you're getting minerals that your cells need to function. A study found that dates have one of the highest antioxidant contents among dried fruits. Dates are calorie-dense, though. 3 medjool dates have about 200 calories and 50 grams of carbs. If you're managing diabetes, you need to account for that. But in the right context, like replacing refined sugar in recipes, They're a smart choice. 10th, lentils, lentils. In Genesis, Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of lentil stew. They were cheap, filling, and nutritious, and they still are. Lentils are one of those foods that sound healthy but boring. But if you're looking for a high protein, high fiber food that stabilizes blood sugar and costs almost nothing, lentils are hard to beat. A cup of cooked lentils has about 18 grams of protein and 16 grams of fiber. That combination does something really important. It keeps you full. It slows how fast your stomach empties. That prevents hunger spikes and keeps your blood sugar steady. Lentils also have a low glycemic index around 30. When you eat lentils, your blood sugar rises slowly and steadily. Your insulin response is moderate. You don't get the crash. They're rich in folate, a B vitamin essential for DNA synthesis and red blood cell production. Elevated homocysteine is an independent risk factor for heart disease. Folate helps convert homocysteine into safer compounds. A big review found that eating legumes like lentils significantly lowered fasting blood sugar and improved long-term blood sugar control. Lentils don't need to be soaked and cook in about 20 to 30 minutes. Add them to salads, soups, or grain bowls. 11th, beans, fava. Lentils are a nutritional powerhouse, but they're not the only legume the Bible talks about. Beans, specifically broad beans, also called fava beans. They were a staple protein source in the ancient Mediterranean and Middle Eastern diet. If you've ever had falafel, you've probably eaten fava beans. Like lentils, beans are high in protein and fiber, but fava beans are especially rich in iron and folate. Iron is part of hemoglobin, the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen. If you're low in iron, your cells don't get enough oxygen. You feel tired, weak, short of breath. Your brain feels foggy. Here's the key. Vitamin C dramatically increases the absorption of plant-based iron. So if you eat fava beans with something acidic, tomatoes, lemon juice, bell peppers, you absorb significantly more iron. Without it, you might only absorb 5 to 10%. With vitamin C, that can jump to 20 to 30%. Fava beans are also very high in folate. Folate is essential for making new red blood cells. A study found that people who regularly ate legumes had higher intakes of folate, iron, magnesium, and fiber. 12th, garlic, garlic. In the book of Numbers, the Israelites longed for the garlic they'd eaten in Egypt. It wasn't just a flavor, and for good reason. Garlic is one of the most studied foods in the world for its medicinal properties. When you crush or chop raw garlic, you rupture its cells and trigger an enzyme reaction that produces a compound called allicin. Allicin is sulfur-based and responsible for garlic's pungent smell and most of its health benefits. Allicin has antimicrobial properties. It's been shown in lab studies to inhibit the growth of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and even parasites. That's why garlic has been used traditionally to fight infections. Allicin also affects your heart system. It helps relax blood vessels by increasing the production of molecules that dilate blood vessels and lower blood pressure. It reduces the stickiness of platelets. It's been shown to modestly lower LDL cholesterol and total cholesterol. A big review looked at 39 studies and found that garlic supplementation significantly reduced total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, especially in people with elevated levels. Add fresh garlic to your meals regularly. Aim for 1 to 2 cloves a day if you tolerate it. If you're on blood thinners like warfarin, let your doctor know if you're eating a lot of garlic. 13th, onions and leeks. Onions and leeks are garlic's quieter cousins. They don't get as much attention, but they do something critical for your gut that most people don't even know they need. Both are mentioned in the Bible. They're members of the allium family and share some of the same health-promoting compounds. Onions and leeks are rich in a type of fiber called inulin, which is a prebiotic. That means it feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut. Your body can't digest inulin. It passes through your stomach and small intestine intact and reaches your colon where your gut bacteria ferment it. When bacteria ferment inulin, they produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. These compounds do several things. Butyrate is the primary fuel source for the cells lining your colon. It keeps your gut lining strong. Here's the bigger picture. Your gut microbiome affects almost every system in your body. It influences your immune system, your mood, your metabolism, even your risk of chronic disease. When your microbiome is diverse and balanced, you're healthier. Prebiotics like inulin help restore and maintain that balance. Use onions and leeks regularly in your cooking, sautéed, roasted, or raw in salads. 14th, cucumbers. The next food is even simpler. It's mostly water, low in calories, and easy to grow. Cucumbers. Mentioned in the Bible, they were a common food in Egypt and Israel, cooling, hydrating, and abundant in the hot climate. Cucumbers are about 95% water. That makes them one of the most hydrating foods you can eat. And hydration matters more than most people realize, especially as you age. As you get older, your sense of thirst becomes less reliable. At the same time, your kidneys become less efficient. Chronic mild dehydration contributes to fatigue, constipation, kidney stones, and cognitive decline. Eating high water content foods like cucumbers helps you stay hydrated without drinking glass after glass of water. Keep cucumbers washed and sliced in your fridge. Snack on them plain, add them to salads, or put them in water to make it more appealing to drink. 15th, fish. Jesus fed the multitudes with fish. He called fishermen to be his disciples. Fish was central to the diet of first century Israel, and it remains one of the most studied foods for brain and heart health. Fatty fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, and herring are the best source of omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA. These are long-chain omega-3s. Your body can convert some omega-3s from plants into EPA and DHA, but the conversion rate is low. So if you want meaningful amounts, you need to eat fish. EPA and DHA reduce inflammation by competing with omega-6 fatty acids. In the brain, DHA is a structural component of neurons. It's literally part of your brain tissue. Low DHA is associated with cognitive decline, depression, and Alzheimer's disease. High DHA intake is linked to better memory and lower risk of dementia. For the heart, omega-3s lower triglycerides, reduce blood pressure, and slow the progression of plaque. Fish is also one of the best sources of vitamin D, which most people are deficient in. Aim for at least 2 servings of fatty fish per week. A serving is about 3 to 4 ounces. 16th, lamb. It was the Passover lamb, the sacrificial lamb. In ancient Israel, lamb was a special food. And nutritionally, lamb is a complete protein with nutrients that are hard to get elsewhere. Lamb is a rich source of heme iron, which is absorbed much more efficiently than plant-based iron. It's also high in vitamin B12, which you can only get from animal foods. B12 is essential for making red blood cells and supporting brain function. But here's the important part. Red meat also comes with risks. High intake of red meat is associated with increased risk of colorectal cancer, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. Red meat isn't poison, and it isn't a superfood. It's a source of nutrients that some people need, but it's something to eat in moderation. If you eat lamb, treat it as an occasional food, once or twice a week. Choose grass-fed when you can. 17th, honey. It's mentioned over 60 times in the Bible. A land flowing with milk and honey. Honey was a symbol of abundance, a source of energy, and a natural medicine. Raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide, which gives honey natural antimicrobial properties. That's why honey has been used to treat wounds and burns. Honey also contains antioxidants. Darker honeys tend to have higher antioxidant content. Now here's the critical part. Honey is still sugar. About 80% of honey is fructose and glucose. It raises your blood sugar. The advantage of honey over white sugar is the additional compounds and the fact that it's less processed. It's a better choice if you're going to sweeten something, but it's not a free pass. Use raw, local honey in small amounts. 18th, almonds. In Genesis, Jacob sent almonds as a gift. They were considered valuable and precious. Almonds are one of the most popular nuts in the world. They've been studied extensively for their effects on heart health, weight management, and blood sugar control. Almonds are high in monounsaturated fats. A single ounce contains 9 grams of monounsaturated fat, 6 grams of protein, and 3.5 grams of fiber. The combination makes them incredibly filling. When you eat a handful of almonds, you feel full for hours. That helps prevent overeating and supports weight management. A study found that eating almonds daily improved cholesterol levels and reduced belly fat in people with high cholesterol. Another study showed that almonds improved insulin sensitivity and reduced after meal blood sugar spikes. Pre portion your almonds. Eat them raw or dry roasted, unsalted. 19th, coriander. In Exodus, the manna is described as being like coriander seed. Coriander has mild medicinal properties that have been used for digestive issues for centuries. Coriander seeds contain essential oils that have mild muscle relaxing and gas relieving effects. Use coriander seeds in cooking. Toast them lightly and grind them for maximum benefit. 20th, wine. The final food is one that's caused more confusion than almost any other. Wine, it's everywhere in scripture. Where? In Wine was a daily part of life in the ancient world. Moderate wine consumption, especially red wine, has been associated with lower rates of heart disease. But alcohol is also a toxin. It's linked to liver disease, certain cancers, and cognitive decline. A major study concluded that the safest level of alcohol consumption is zero. Wine is not medicine. If you don't drink, don't start for health reasons. If you already drink moderately, the research suggests that small amounts of red wine may fit into a healthy pattern. That's 20 foods. All of them have been part of the human diet for thousands of years. All of them have research suggesting real benefits for longevity, metabolic health, and disease prevention. When you eat this way, when whole grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, fish, nuts, and healthy oils make up the foundation of your diet, you're actively reducing chronic inflammation, improving insulin sensitivity, and supporting your blood vessels. You're feeding your gut bacteria and giving your body the raw materials it needs to repair and regulate itself. You don't need to eat all 20 foods. You don't need to overhaul your entire diet overnight. Pick 2 or 3 that sound doable. Start there. Build the habit, then add another one. Because here's what happens. Your blood sugar stabilizes. Your energy improves. Your cholesterol numbers shift. Your gut feels better. You sleep better. You think more clearly. And a year from now, you look back and realize you feel completely different. Not because you did something extreme, but because you did something sustainable. Thank you for spending this time with me. Subscribe to my channel, Sophia Lindstrom, for more videos that break down confusing health information into simple, practical steps you can actually take. Your health is worth understanding.